Hey, welcome back, guys. This is Jason, KM4ACK. Today, I want to show you how to run 2 Raspberry Pis in the field. Stick around, and we'll get right to it. Real quick before we get going today, I've got to give a shout out to these guys. They're my latest patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the channel, I'll leave a link to Patreon down in the description below. Now you might be asking why you would want to run 2 Raspberry Pis in the field. Well, sometimes I want to run 2 different radio setups when I'm in the field. If you've been around the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I run a complete Raspberry Pi setup in my mobile along with a Yaesu 857D. And I'm out here in the field today doing some testing on another kit, or I'm getting ready to anyway. And I wanted to be able to control not only the radio in this bag, but the radio in the Jeep as well. So what I want to do is I want to tie both of those Raspberry Pis together so that I can control both of them with one tablet. Now, we could connect to the hotspot that this Pi is generating and do something on it, then disconnect and reconnect to the Jeep's hotspot and do something on that particular radio. But that's pretty cumbersome if you want to quickly bounce back and forth between the 2 radios. So let's jump over to the computer and let me show you a better way to do that. Okay, so over on the Raspberry Pi, we're going to have to install the VNC viewer. Now, don't get confused, the VNC server actually comes pre-installed with your Raspberry Pi, and all you have to do is enable it. But a VNC viewer does not come installed. And right now I'm on the primary Raspberry Pi that I'm going to be working with in the field. So I'll leave a link to this page down in the description below, but it's the download section over at realvnc.com. Make sure you do highlight the one for the Raspberry Pi, and then we'll just click download the VNC viewer. We'll give that a couple of seconds, and actually just going to tell it to save it. And we'll give that just a couple of seconds to download. Shouldn't take too terribly long at all. Now that that's done, I'm going to minimize the browser out of the way, and we'll go ahead and open up our File Explorer and go ahead and come over to Downloads. Once we get to Downloads, let's go ahead and I'm going to right-click on that and say Package Installer, or Package Install rather. We'll give that just a couple of seconds. That should boot up and ask me if I want to install this file. So I'm going to go ahead and say install, and this will go ahead and take care of everything for you. It will ask you for your sudo password. Give it that, and then it just takes a couple of seconds. Okay, so now that that has finished up, we'll just go ahead and verify that we do have that installed. It'll probably put it under the internet, and you can see here is the VNC viewer. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and I'll just minimize that for the moment. Now, let's go ahead and move over to the other Raspberry Pi that we want to control. First of all, our primary is in hotspot mode, so it is serving up a hotspot that we can connect to in the field with the tablet. And we're going to use that for the second Raspberry Pi. So I've moved over to the other Raspberry Pi that I want to control, and I am going to come up to its wireless settings, and I'm going to get it to connect to the primary Raspberry Pi. So that's my KM4ACK-891. I'll click on that, and it'll ask me for the password. We'll go ahead and put that password in and click OK. And now if we click right here on the Wi-Fi fan, you can see that it is indeed connected to the KM4ACK-891. So let's move back to that Raspberry Pi. Looking down here in DHCP addresses for the hotspot, I can see that that Raspberry Pi connected up at 10.10.10.162. So I'm going to take the VNC viewer, go ahead and open it back up, and we're going to type in that address. So 10.10.10.162. Let's go ahead and press return. It's going to give us a identity check warning here. We'll just go ahead and click continue. And then it's asking for the username and password for the other Raspberry Pi. Now, since that's a test box, I do believe it is the default Raspberry. We'll see if I remember that correctly. And look there. I am on my original primary Raspberry Pi, so I'm just going to minimize these two screens. So this is the 891 that I'm running on here. And if you look right up here, this is the VNC window. I'll go ahead and just open it back up. And I'm now looking at the other Raspberry Pi. So I can control both of these from one system just by opening or minimizing this particular window. So I find this super helpful in the field when I want to run two Raspberry Pis and run two radios at the same time, and I want to do it all with one tablet. A lot of times I'm out and I'm running the 891 with HF, and then I will take the radio in my Jeep and I'll set it up for something like Packet WinLink or maybe an APRS Digipeater. And being able to do all of that from one tablet and quickly switch back and forth between the two Raspberry Pis is pretty handy. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. We will see you on the next video. Until then, 7-3.